trying. Doesn't want to work for some reason.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. JJ's not on the camera either. The most important thing is that we can hear you. Okay. So today is May 2nd, 2025. Today's guests are Alex and Laura Olson. Laura is a board member with Decoding Dyslexia, Iowa, and Alex is a college student at University of Northern Iowa. He is studying to become a teacher. This is KHOI 89.1 Story City Ames, and you're listening to I Am Able Iowa, where we discuss the ability and disability. I'm Nancy Baker Curtis, school teacher, board president of the ARC of Iowa, and parent advocate extraordinaire. Our guest co-host for today is JJ Stone. JJ is a self-advocate from Sioux City, Iowa, and he is a proponent for Medicaid expansion. Thank you both, Alex and Laura, so much for being on the show today. Today, we're going to talk all about the world of dyslexia and what it's like to live in a family or to be a person with dyslexia. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
So,
for having us.
oh,
Yeah, thank you.
absolutely. And so, Laura, Alex, I just want to kick it off by taking a few minutes to get to know you. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, your family, and what your journey with dyslexia has been like.
Yeah. I can go first, Alex, and then you can go because this journey started with Alex, actually. I knew nothing of dyslexia before Alex started struggling in kindergarten. And it just we knew very quickly in kindergarten, but he was struggling with reading, struggling with alphabet, things like that. And he had preschool as well and still struggled. So we started questioning it and kept getting from the teachers, oh, he's a boy, they're slower to, catch on to reading. He'll catch up. Don't worry, don't worry. And kind of just kept going, okay, it just didn't seem right, but we kept going. Um, and then we actually repeated kindergarten because he had had 2 years of preschool actually, and then kindergarten. He was a young kindergartner, so we thought, well, we'll go ahead and have him redo kindergarten, see if that can catch him up with his reading, and it didn't. But we still kept hearing from teachers, don't worry, he'll catch up. It'll click someday, don't worry. And it just didn't. And so finally, by the end of second grade year, um, at his conference at the end of his second grade year, I finally said to his teacher, I said, this just, we've tried everything. We had tried tutoring, we had tried everything. And I said, it's just not clicking for him. I said, do you think we should, look into this as like a diagnosis? And she said, yes. Because at that time, schools could not say the word dyslexia. And so, which has changed since then, but at that time they could not. And so that's when I sought out a diagnosis. And so we went to the University of Iowa, and they pretty quickly said, yeah, he has dyslexia. And so that started our journey. And then later found out actually, when I started learning about it, that it actually, my husband had dyslexia and it comes from his side of the family. And I always knew he struggled with reading, but I never understood why. And it didn't, he was an adult, functional, works. Um, and so it finally was like, it was just like, oh, that makes sense now. So we found out it actually comes on his mom's side. So Alex was our original. We then, our youngest, I knew what to look for at that point. And so our youngest was diagnosed much, much earlier than Alex was. Alex was our guinea pig, unfortunately. So Alex, you can take your journey from there.
Yeah, as you kind of mentioned, dyslexia wasn't really well known or understood, at least when I was in school. So it felt really weird, like, hey, all these kids, they can like read grade appropriate books just fine. Why can't I read this? Or I remember very vividly we were reading, it was like a reading comprehension test, and I couldn't for the life of me understand it. And everyone else had like was already done. And I just remember thinking like, man, like what is wrong with me? Like I can't, it's not, nothing's clicking. Um, but once I started to get the accommodations and the help I needed, um, it it helped a lot in that journey. Um, but definitely that that early stage of like, oh, we can't say dyslexia, or like we don't really know much about it, or what does he need? What doesn't he need? Um, but yeah, I mean, like as I went on and as I worked through Barton, the
Mhm.
system that helped me with overcoming my dyslexia to a certain extent, kind of put me on the right path.
That's so incredibly interesting. And you've talked about some of these early warning signs. And Alex, you mentioned some of the struggles that you have. And I know that today, I'm a teacher myself. And so I know today that science of reading is the best practice method for working with learners with dyslexia. But as you both mentioned, boy, have we come a long way in Iowa over the last 5 years. I would say the last 5 years have been a faster pace for teacher professional development around science of reading strategies and best practices. Um, and so, what you mentioned, some of those early warning signs and struggles, I really want to go down that pathway of navigating the process of getting that diagnosis, right? You said you went up to Iowa City. Can you just talk a little bit from the parent perspective of, you know, who did you call? Who did you contact? How did you know where to go? Because I feel like we'll have listeners out there who are in this exact boat and they're just feeling hopeless and lost. And what they really want is hope for their child. So talk us through that, Laura.
That is an excellent question and incredibly frustrating from a parent perspective. Typically, parents are the first ones that notice the issues. You know, they're reading with their children at home. They notice it. And so they have questions for teachers. And typically, what I've seen in the past is a parent will bring up a concern to a teacher, and the teacher will kind of just brush it off and say, "Oh, it'll click. We'll get it. You know, don't worry about it." And nothing against teachers, absolutely. You know, I have the utmost of respect for teachers. But that typically is in the past, I should say, that has been the process. And if a parent keeps pushing it, the teacher will say, or the school administration will say, well, go to your pediatrician and
Mhm.
ask your pediatrician. So a parent they'll go to the pediatrician. The parent pediatrician will say, I don't know anything about dyslexia, go to your school. And so it's this continuous circle that is very, very frustrating for parents. And often parents don't know where to go or what to do at that point. And so I think I possibly just Googled dyslexia diagnosis at that point because I didn't know what I was dealing with. Um, but you know, and Alex is a college student now. He was back in second grade at that point, so it's been many years and a lot of improvements since then. But probably one of our best resources at this point is the Decoding Dyslexia Iowa website, because it does have links on there for parents. You know, drop down screens of where do you go to see a diagnosis? What questions should you ask that evaluator for a diagnosis? You know, I'm looking for a tutor. It has a list of tutors and advocates and things like that. So it is really an incredible resource for parents. And so even though I'm on the board and I'm biased from it, it really is an incredible resource. And I encourage parents to go there. Understood.org is another really incredible resource for parents, but that doesn't have the like, where do I find an evaluator and things like that on it. But it really is, that's your best tool right there, is because it'll give you the links of how do I find an evaluator, what kind of questions should I ask, things like that. Information on 504s and IEPs, which are very, very important for kids with dyslexia as well.
So you kind of tapped into my next question, which are some of those educational supports. You know, as a teacher, I have students who require specially designed instruction. They have their IEP. I have students who just simply need accommodations or 504s, right? Um,
Mhm.
and it sounds like depending on the severity of your dyslexia, you could have need either one. And just because you have an IEP doesn't mean that you don't require accommodations. It just means those accommodations are embedded within your individualized education plan. So, but I'm kind of curious about what are some of the supports that Alex needed, and Alex, feel free to jump in, during those early childhood, elementary school years? And how did those supports and accommodations evolve as you've gone up through your years of study?
Yeah.
Um,
Alex, can I start, Alex, with talking about what you had when you were younger, and then you could talk about what you have now that you're in college?
sure, and I can go
Okay.
over anything that you might have missed.
Yep, sounds great. So when kids are younger, the biggest thing when I'm advocating that I look for or recommend on IEPs and 504s is the audiobooks for students for everything. Whether it's textbooks or pleasure reading, those audiobooks are so very important, as well as materials in audio. Don't give my dyslexic child a worksheet on paper, or math problems, a worksheet of math problems. It is nothing but words. Don't give them that. Let's put that in like Google Docs where it can be read aloud to them, testing as well. Let's not give them a paper test, because that really the playing field is not even at that point. So if you really want to test their knowledge, let's have this test read aloud to them, so you can really see, because you're fighting then with the reading of the words where they may know the information, they just don't understand the question. So those are big things. And extended time, because there often is, since it's a language processing issue, there is often just some problems with processing that information. It may take a little bit longer. And so extended time on tests and projects and stuff is very important. And as well as being able to do like a first draft, come back and look at it, maybe have it checked by the teacher, and then come back. And absolutely for the child's mental stance, no public reading at all. Absolutely no public reading and no public writing as well, unless the student volunteers. But those can be so detrimental and so hurtful for students to have to be forced to read aloud in front of a group, or write something on the board in front of the class when they know they may misspell half the words, is really frustrating. So that's what I look for younger kids. So Alex, what do you need or want as an older college student?
Yeah, I guess kind of it's changed a lot since I was a child. Because now every every classroom, every student has an iPad or a computer to themselves. Um, and like that has made accessibilities like a lot easier. Because when I was in elementary school, I didn't have any technology, basically. I had to go, into a separate room with a different teacher when I got read my tests, and when I got, extra time, I'd go into that room. I didn't have like, earbuds I can plug in and listen to my tests. In middle school, I was given this like brick of a laptop that didn't have really any useful technology in it. Um, but I've seen that evolve. So I think it's a lot easier. It's students have a lot easier time now with getting those accommodations and anything they might need to succeed. In college now, um, professors will very rarely require you to actually turn in a handwritten paper. If you're taking a test in person, maybe a few short words, paragraph at most. Um, but for any online quizzes, it's you type and you have autocorrect and um, all of that. And then, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier for students of any grade now to get what, I didn't have.
It's really
Glad I
interesting.
sub in here real quick. I just have a quick question for you guys. I'm learning more about dyslexia with you. I remember during my middle school years, a lot of people that I can't say that it was dyslexia for that, but some of the people that couldn't say a word or something may have got detention or even some of the words they stuttered. Is that a form of dyslexia as well, or is that a different type? Because I know that people that stutter frequently haven't been diagnosed as dyslexic. It's a whole different thing, but some people did stutter certain words.
That's a great question. And that really, there's no direct correlation like between stuttering and dyslexia. But what I have seen occasionally is the pressure and anxiety that dyslexia invokes in the classroom will lead to nervous tics. And sometimes that is slight stuttering. So even though there's no direct correlation, that nervous tick can lead to that. And I've seen all sorts of nervous tics happen in students. And luckily those are the ones that go away, can go away. But I guess there's maybe a possible indirect version there. But I've only heard of stuttering once in any of the kids that I've dealt with, but I have seen a lot of nervous tics due
Okay,
to just the pressure and anxiety in the classroom.
thank you.
Mhm.
And I do feel like that pressure and anxiety is just very amplified these days. The social pressure to perform, to kind of be on stage. Oftentimes, the classroom is a very performance-based environment, right? And
Yes.
I've taught you, you've read this to learn, now produce and do that on paper. Oh, and I really connected with what Alex said about the improvements in technology and the support that technology can play when accommodating for students with disabilities. The technology we have today is just simply amazing. And very frequently, earbuds are common in the classroom. Keyboards and iPads are common in the classroom. It's not very often that we actually have students put pencil to paper and intend for them to manually scribe what they need to do. And so to hear about the innovative accommodations that have developed over time to address this very specific learning disability, it's just really exciting. Um, and I can see how those personal experiences that you dealt with as a parent and as a student yourself, Alex, have really led and kind of taken you on a path from being a passive participant in what's happening to you to actually becoming a parent or a self-advocate. So can you tell us a little bit more about that whole experience and what made you be inspired to become a teacher or even to join the board for Decoding Dyslexia?
Alex, do you want to go first on what inspired you to become a teacher?
Sure. Um, I don't really know um what first inspired it, but um since I could remember, I've always just wanted to become a teacher or an educator. Ever since I was in elementary school, um, you know, in those younger years, teachers or even in middle school and high school, there are role models that you can potentially see yourself in the future. Um, and my fourth grade teacher, Mr. Level, he was a really understanding teacher, and my first male teacher. So I kind of made that connection, like, oh my gosh, there can be male teachers. Um, but and he was also what got me to like reading again, as in those younger years. Um, I wasn't any good at it. I couldn't retain like any of the information that I was reading. So I really didn't like it, but he read out loud to the class. I'm like, oh my gosh, when somebody's reading to me, I can understand the book. Um, but that was kind of what solidified my dream to be a teacher. And then from there, it kind of just evolved. Like I found my love for history, and now I'm in college to become a history teacher.
So what's interesting, and I don't know if Alex is just not saying this or if he doesn't honestly remember, but actually his original desire to be a teacher was because he had such a bad experience that second grade year. A very, very ununderstanding teacher of the reading issues, and then had awesome teachers third and fourth grade years, especially. Not that he didn't have other ones, but it was very nice having that really great third grade teacher after such a bad second grade year. And that
Mhm.
third grade teacher also was very willing, very happy to work with me and try to understand dyslexia. So, really kudos out to Mrs. Carpenter and Mr. Lovell that they really saved what could have been, if he would have had bad teachers, in subsequent years, I don't know that he would be in college right now, and especially not wanting to be a teacher. So, there's the good and bad teachers in our life that really affect our lives.
What you say is so true. I think we've all had those experiences in the classroom. We've all had a teacher who's made us feel small. Um, Even good teachers have bad days and sometimes, but there are sometimes just those ones that just, for whatever reason, are still teaching, still hanging on, and they're just very set in their ways. Not necessarily trauma informed, not necessarily best practice. Um, and then when you get a really amazing teacher, somebody who sees in you the potential you don't see in yourself, someone who gives you hope and patience and kindness and understanding, it is a game changer and it is a confidence builder. And I think so much of this as an eighth and ninth grade teacher myself. Students are in such a challenging time of their lives. And they're coming with so much baggage. And the world today is just so different than what it was even when Alex was in school. And that was not that long ago, let alone the 30 years ago or 40 years ago that I was in school. And I just think about the impact teachers have on students every single day. It's just really inspiring. If teachers are looking to learn more, is that Decoding Dyslexia website a good access point for teacher education as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we hold a yearly conference every year that's really geared for teachers and parents as well. But absolutely, it has information on there for teachers as well, and where to seek, links for other information to get more information. And we have support groups as well that some are just for teachers. We have some for parents and some for teachers. So absolutely.
Now, I know that when you talk about parents being a part and knowing more, I know you said that you were a board member for Decoding Dyslexia Iowa. What led you from personal experience into public advocacy?
Uh, that's a great question, and I don't really know that I have very solid answer. Everything started with Alex actually, because I did not know anything about dyslexia at that point, and when he was that young, we had very few resources in Iowa, and actually I became a tutor for him because that's pretty much all that was available. We did have some tutoring at that point. It was very expensive, and honestly, we just could not afford it. And so, that was heartbreaking for me to so desperately want to help my son. I saw how it was affecting him mentally. I was desperate to help him, but couldn't afford it. It was so hard. And so I just kind of, again, I just Googled, I think, like, how do I help my child with dyslexia? And found out that, oh, there are intervention approaches that I can do. I never ever would have seen myself as a dyslexia tutor. Um, but just start and even when I started helping him, I was like, I'm just here to help my son. And then it just kind of branched out from there. But from then when I started tutoring, I would have my students that were on 504s and IEPs, and the parents would go into these meetings and not know what they were doing. And even when I started out, with 504s and IEPs for Alex, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the questions to ask. I didn't know the laws. I didn't know what was available to me. And so I had to, and I knew that he had weak IEPs, and so I had to learn. And so just started learning on my own, and it just branches out from there. Somebody hears that, oh, you did a meeting for Alex, or he has a really strong IEP. How'd you get that? Because mine is not. Um, or, I go to these meetings and there's 10 other people and I feel so, I feel so small and don't know what I'm doing. And so it just kind of happened organically. I started helping people. And now that's about half of how I spend my time. Half of it is tutoring and half of it is just advocacy work. So it really just came around organically. I really sought out to learn everything I could to help Alex. And, I needed to walk into these meetings and feel like I could talk intelligently and be heard and be, that they would take me seriously. So, um, it's just a personal mission of mine. And now here I am. Never thought I'd be here.
And it's kind of towing the line too, right? Because those meetings, I don't know about you, Laura, but whenever I go into my son's IEP meetings, even though I know we're all sitting there thinking about Charlie, we're all on the same team, there are some lines that are drawn because we have different interests. Mine are in getting Charlie the most amount of supports that he needs to be his most successful self. And theirs are a balance between um, things that they can tangibly do and the amount of resources, whether they're human capital, financial capital, that they're actually able to implement. And so I feel like that IEP 504 process, even when you're all on the same team, even when you're all fighting for the same thing, is just such a heavy lift. And whether you intend for it to be confrontational or not, you leave there feeling like you just battled the fight of your life. Um, and I also feel like as a parent, so much of our role is spent educating our team on how to best work and support with our child and their disability or learning difference. And I'm sure that's changed a bit over time as we've gotten some new legislation passed here in the state, as we have new technologies to support learners in the classroom. If you could look back, say, over the past 5 years or so here in Iowa, what would you say are some of the biggest wins for the dyslexia community?
Oh gosh, there are many, many. One of the biggest things that I personally see is just the awareness of parents. That they know what to look for, though they know how to question, the questions to ask of teachers and get diagnosis. So just getting awareness of dyslexia and what it is and isn't. Trying to get past that it's seeing letters or words backwards, and no, it's not that at all. So the awareness is what I see is getting huge, as I no longer feel like I have to go in and educate an IEP team or teachers on what dyslexia is. I feel like they actually have a pretty good understanding of it. Now, whether they know how to remediate it or not may be a different story, but at least they have an understanding of it. And I think just classrooms are more dyslexia friendly than they wouldn't be. Now, whether that happened because of technology coming in, or they wanted to, who knows? But it doesn't matter. It's there. But there actually have been quite a few legislative changes for dyslexia in Iowa. And one is even just getting the definition dyslexia in Iowa law. That seems like a very small thing, but it actually was huge because some people still didn't know what it was. And so getting that in and actually having teachers being able to say that word is huge. That's so helpful to parents because, like, when I was dealing with Alex in second grade, like, she knew. It took me a while to be like, well, you should have this looked at. She knew, and that's why her reaction was like, yes, have him, evaluated. She knew she just couldn't say it. And so that is huge too, of just being able, teachers being able to say that word and have that word in IEPs and documents. Um, we have dyslexia task forces now. that we are working with legislation in Iowa and have been for several years now, making changes in that educator. We have a dyslexia handbook now, which is readily available. That's really, really helpful to parents. Even with Decoding Dyslexia Iowa, having these support groups for parents is really helpful. Having our website that has information so parents can just go there and get the information is really, really helpful. We had the Iowa Reading Research Center. We have, you can go and get a technology evaluation to find out what does your child need as far as technology. There's millions of apps and things. Well, what will work best for your child? So we have places that can do that now. So it really has been tremendous.
And to kind of bring in more about the Decoding Dyslexia Iowa, what does the organization exactly do and its core mission?
Great question. Raising awareness is one of our key issues, but also raising awareness in the community, but also supporting parents. We need that support for parents. We have, not only our yearly conference, but we also have parent education seminars. We have kids events. So kids with dyslexia can get together and realize I'm not the only one. Or hey, this kid has it and they seem pretty okay. So we have kids events as well. So as well as just the website, just to have out there for information for people. But our really thing is to support parents and support teachers. Let's get teachers the information they need so they can have a more dyslexia friendly classroom. Let's educate them on what it is. We have a lot of board members that go into school systems and makes presentations on this is what dyslexia is. This is how you can have a dyslexia friendly classroom, which is not only beneficial to kids with dyslexia, it's beneficial to all students. It may be beneficial to that one that you don't even know that they have dyslexia, or maybe they don't have dyslexia, but they just they heard that, so they understood it better. So it's really support and education is really our primary missions or focus.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to I Am Able Iowa, and we're talking with our guests, Laura and Alex Olson. Laura is a board member with Decoding Dyslexia Iowa. She's a parent advocate, reading tutor, and IEP advocate, or special education advocate for individuals with dyslexia. Her son, Alex, is a person with dyslexia. He's studying to become a teacher, and he's currently enrolled at the University of Iowa. So again, thank you so much for being here with us today. Alex, you talked a little bit previously about some of the accommodations you have in your college level courses and some of the inspirations you've had to become a teacher. How has your college education prepared you for your future role that you will have as an educator? I'm thinking about as a person with dyslexia and someone who has a learning disability, how is it kind of shaping you for the teacher you want to be?
Yeah, so I want to be the teacher that kind of wasn't there for me when I needed them. I want to be the teacher that says like, hey, it's okay to have this. It's not abnormal. It's pretty common. Um, and I think I obviously don't have any references to past to years past, but the classes today they focus on, you know, students that might need extra help. They focus on, how, good classroom management. They focus on uplifting students to bring out students' full potential and in any way that might look like. Um, yeah.
I agree. I think that as an educator, when I first did my teacher preparation, a lot of it was focused on how you create a lesson plan or how you put together a presentation or this is a rubric. As I've come back into teaching after having a 6-year hiatus to care for my son who's disabled, the teaching training is different, right? It's trauma-based and trauma-informed best practices. It's inspiring students to be resilient and to have grit, right? To be able to persevere through challenging situations. And so I can speak a little bit to the evolution of teacher training itself. However, I know for a fact that it wasn't in just until maybe 2 or 3 years ago that I ever actually received any formalized training on dyslexia. And the courses that you're taking up at UNI, is dyslexia one of the topics that you're studying?
It's not a topic, or it might be mentioned in passing with other like other you know, disabilities one might see when dealing with students with 504s or IEPs. Um, it's more of a package deal of saying like, hey, this is the law, you need to follow it. Um, but also like making sure that student gets the help that they need. You're not just, you know, putting in 50% or the bare minimum. You're going above and beyond for that student so they can succeed.
And Alex's is a little different as well because he wants to be a high school teacher. And so his actually is, he's a history major with an education minor. So his education, his teaching education is a little bit different than if he were going to be like an elementary age teacher. And then they would have hopefully more classes on dyslexia or seeing those. But in former decades, you know, even somebody could get out of school with a special education endorsement or a reading just endorsement, sorry, and maybe never hear the word dyslexia, where it's the single largest reading disability. So it's that is evolving, and we kind of realize that in order. If we want the schools to change the way that they're teaching reading, we have to start with the colleges. It has to start there because teachers would get out and know nothing, and it wasn't their fault. They were never taught about it. So unless they sought it out themselves, they were never taught it. So that is really where we have to make changes is at the college level, these teaching programs for teachers, and especially in the elementary grades, because that's where it needs to be caught. You know, if they're not catching it until they come to Alex, somebody failed along the way.
Well, and we're all reading teachers, right? We're all literacy teachers. We're all writing teachers. I'm a middle school, high school endorsed teacher as well. I don't teach elementary, but that was a shift that came about, I would say, here in the last 10 years, is that
Yeah.
we're all reading teachers. And part of that was, I think, due to an increase of an awareness around language processing disorders. I think the other part of it was the influx that we have of speakers of languages other than English, right? And so here in our
Mhm.
classrooms, we have more of an inclusive embedded instruction model as opposed to the in instruction in isolation in a separate classroom, right? That's specially designed instruction. We've now kind of limited to the very top tier support on that pyramid for those multi-tiered systems of support. Whereas in the past, all kids with their label were just pulled out of the classroom. And we've kind of had a mind shift in education that if we want kids to gain and to close the achievement gap, well, then keeping them in the classroom is the best way to do that, right? And so I
Yes.
do think that there has been that shift. But I would agree that as a high school, middle school teacher, we didn't really learn about teaching kids to read. We just assumed that they took care of that in elementary school. And so if you were getting to me, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and you couldn't read, I was thinking, well, are you lazy? When really that couldn't have been further from the truth. It's that you were struggling to access the same high quality core curriculum as all the other students in the classroom.
Exactly.
The real
Yeah.
mentality shift, I think that's going.
Yes. Yep. Definitely. Definitely. That's a great
One
thing, and
question that
I'm
I do
happy it's
have.
happening.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, JJ.
I was going to just ask, and listening to the way that you guys explain things with dyslexia, Is it more, uh, is the word correctionable or controlling if you do get it taken care of at a younger age, or does it continue with you the rest of your life?
Both. Both. It absolutely, you can remediate it. It absolutely, there are several programs out there, and most schools actually now have quality programs for remediation in them. So remediation is possible. Now, are maybe is a dyslexic going to be the fastest reader? Maybe, maybe not. So it can be remediated, but it may not mean that they're going to be the perfect speller or the fastest reader out there. It will remain with them. So they may, even though you may remediate their dyslexia, they still may need supports for the rest of their lives. So, they can function in the world, but it might be easier, if their emails are read to them. Instead of having to I read those emails. So it very, very easy to remediate. The younger you start the remediation, the more effective and the easier it's going to be. But it's not something that goes away. It will remain, and supports may need to be in place. So both are the answer to your question.
That sounds good.
And if either one of you could wave your magic wand and you could suddenly deem that you could have colleges and teacher preparation programs do one thing when preparing future teachers for the classroom to support students and to identify students with dyslexia, what would that wish be?
Alex, do you want to go first on that? Since you're in it right now?
Oh man. Yeah. I guess um understanding for teachers just to understand that these disabilities and these things exist. The student isn't just lazy or doesn't just put in half the effort of all the other kids, that it's actually there is something wrong in their brain that just slows them down or makes them struggle to read and write. Um, I heard a lot that I was just lazy, or like I wasn't putting in the effort, or all of these other things. But it was actually something wrong. So I guess my one wish would be for teachers to kind of get off their high horse, I want to say, and actually fully understand that, these things exist in our world and it's a fact, and there is something you can do about it. You can, work with parents, you could work with IEP members, and work with a 504. But we can see what Laura has to say.
And actually, I'm trying to narrow it down to just one, because that's actually the really hard part. I think education of teachers and parents as well is the biggest thing. We have to educate teachers. And what do you look for? Please stop saying, "Oh, it'll click one day, they'll catch up." They don't. Research does not support that. So we really need to expand that education. Um, I think as a tutor and an advocate, what I see in kids, um, they think very early on, they think they're dumb. And that absolutely breaks my heart. And as much as I do as a tutor, is probably as much as remediation is building that self-confidence back, because it is gone. Usually by the time they reach me, it is gone. And so I try to build that back up. So if there was a way to um, support kids in not thinking they're dumb, if I had one wish for the kids, that would be it, because it's just so heartbreaking to see that. And that is a snowball effect. And so I'm like on an uphill climb to still build the self-confidence back for these kids, because it's hard to build something out of nothing. Um, but and I think helping kids understand that if they do have to go like to with a special ed teacher, to if they get pulled out of the room, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. They don't want to use accommodations in the classroom because they don't want to appear different. And so having a classroom where that, using accommodations is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And it's okay. There's nothing, all kids need all different kinds of accommodations that it's okay. And I would never want them to be, feel that they would feel different, in the classroom. So I think I think of it from more like the mental emotional standpoint for the kids.
When we
And to
were
kind of go off what, sorry about that, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, when we were creating our kind of classroom rules in my class, one of the topics came up was, oh, we need equality. I need you to treat everyone the same. And I argued back, do we need equality or do we need equity? Do you want me
Mm.
to treat you all exactly the same every single time in every single scenario? Or do you want me to be the trustworthy judge and to give each and every single one of you what you need in order to be successful? And it was amazing because you could see those students' light bulbs go off. And while they wanted me to have consistent standards for expectations, they wanted me to have consistent policies and rules that would keep them safe. Ultimately, they all decided that equity was so much more important than equality because if they needed it, they wanted me to be able to give them what they need. And so when I hear you talking, both of you, that's the thing that kind of resonates with me as a teacher is that giving kids what they need. Maybe, as Alex said, compassion and understanding, an extra day or two to complete a task. Maybe it's what you said, Laura, pulling a student out of the classroom to provide them with the support that they need and to give them more focused practice to build the confidence by doing in order to come back into the classroom and be able to more successfully engage in the content area. I just think that those lived experiences are going to be such a benefit for Alex as he moves forward into the realm of public education, because I think students are desperately seeking compassionate teachers. And so I'm very excited for what the future holds for you both.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Can I,
Go ahead.
oh, go ahead, Alex.
yeah, I just want to add on to that, equity. I mean, that's not just for people with learning disabilities. That's just a good thing to have in the classroom. Maybe giving the student that like has to pick up his siblings after school, less homework or more time on that homework, or if a kid is always tired in class, I mean, let them take that time and give them notes after class. I mean, I think just having that compassion and then having that equity in the classroom can go a long way.
Isn't he going to be an
And it
awesome
definitely
teacher?
can do that. I will guarantee you that.
Absolutely. We've all needed what a mulligan, right? A do-over, an extra day. We've
Hmm.
all had things that go wrong, and we've needed to be shown grace and we needed to have humility. Um, I think kids today oftentimes get a really bad rap. We hear so often the dialogue, kids are lazy, they're just on their phones. The reality is that life is so much more complex than it has ever been. And whether that's exacerbated by social media and telephones, I just, I think what we all need is sometimes a little moment of reflection to remember that we too have been in that space, right? We too have been challenged to the brink of where we cannot do. We've shut down. And that may, from the outside perspective, look as someone who does not care or lazy or apathetic. But in reality, it's just people trying to get by and get through the moment and the cards that they've been dealt. I mean, we have to play the hand that we've been dealt, right? And I saw it even today when I asked students to record something on their iPads in Spanish because a lot of them hadn't done it. And I had been out of the classroom and I was trying to build that time in class. And the one student just looked at me and said, "But I hate talking in front of people." And I said, "Okay, so what are you proposing?" And she said, "I just want to take my plate home and record it at home in my room." And I said, "Great, I love that plan. Can you take your phone out and set a reminder?" I need you to turn this in because if you don't turn this in by Monday, I'm marking this thing, which means your parents are going to get the email. Deal was done. We were able to move on. But how often does that situation in that scenario go a different way? Because we misread the behaviors of the student. We assume that the behavior is a result of a problem with us as the teacher or the task. We don't see it for what it truly is, which is I'm struggling to access the curriculum, or I'm struggling to do the task you're asking me because my anxiety is escalating and I am dysregulated. And so I just think so often kids get a bad rap today, but really we're asking kids to do so much more. And I guess this is just I'm on my soapbox teacher, like pep talk. Like we actually have some pretty amazing kids out there in the world today.
We do. I absolutely agree. And I think that we have to look at behaviors because typically if a child has dyslexia and is having trouble accessing the material, written or, the two things are going to happen, two behaviors typically are going to happen. We're going to get real quiet and try to disappear. The teacher's going to look at them and they're going to be looking down. They're going to try to disappear in the classroom. And typically we kind of see these along gender lines. Girls are the ones that will just try to disappear. If I get quiet and don't pay any, don't raise any problems, then this can go unseen. So we see that behavior. The other one is the aggression. I just want out of this classroom because it's frustrating me so badly. I want out of this classroom. So if they misbehave enough, they're out of the classroom. That's what they wanted. And so it does, the behavior sometimes are a result of that instead of, other factors. And I think that is overlooked sometimes as well.
Do you believe schools are doing enough to identify dyslexia early?
Progress is being made. Definitely, we're seeing progress. We have things like the FAST test now, where that starts in kindergarten. So, it- again, I want to say yes and no to your question. We have systems in place now. It is interpreting and reacting on that information sometimes is where the breakdown happens is, they'll say, well, they were 1 or 2 points away from the average range. Well, you know what? They're still below average. It doesn't matter how close they are. They're still below average. And so, or I see, like, let's try this and then let's try this. Well, no, intervention needed to start, immediately. So, I'm glad that the way things are going, I think it's baby steps and we do have some steps in place. But again, it's that reaction to them or the actions that the next actions that need to be stronger.
How
Okay.
did you guys feel when Alex got his diagnosis?
Do you remember that, Alex?
Oh man, it was so long ago. Like Iowa City, I wear glasses and that's where I got my eyes tested. So I don't think I even realized you were going to test for dyslexia that day. But yeah, I don't really remember any of it.
Mhm. And I ask if Alex remembered it because I think the reaction is different for kids versus their
Uh-huh.
parents. Often, and a lot of times, parents don't want to tell their kids, and I adamantly disagree with that. I think sometimes kids are very relieved to find out there's a reason why they're struggling. Oh, I'm not dumb after all, So I think kids are relieved. So share that diagnosis. I think it could be a good thing. Parents often, I cried. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know. They said dyslexia, dysnomia, dysgraphia. I was what? No, any of those three were. Never heard of two of them. So I think I cried because I was just so overwhelmed with what do I do now? I didn't know. We didn't have the resources of, what do you do now? Um, But I think a lot of times it's just more confusion for parents after they get that dyslexia because they still don't know. And so they still go back to the school and say, I have this diagnosis, and schools still don't know what to do with it sometimes. So um, it's I think it leads to more confusion for parents, unfortunately. But kids definitely it's a relief. Oh, there's a reason why I'm struggling is a good thing for kids. And then when
And if a
parents do,
parent, oh, go ahead.
I think then sometimes if parents do start researching, then they get even more confused because then they find out there's so much out there and there's a lot of disinformation still. And so then that could just lead to more confusion too.
I was just going to ask if a parent listening today kind of suspects their child might be dyslexic, what type of steps would you recommend that they take first?
Get them tested. Find out what you're dealing with. Don't try all these interventions that just delay things. Get them tested. You're going to find out one way or the other. Yes, no. Why live in this state of I don't know, I'm questioning this, I think this, I don't know, which expense is a problem then because it is very expensive, but get them tested. You do what you can to find out exactly what you're dealing with. You don't know what to solve if you don't know exactly what you're dealing with. So I always say get them tested one way or the other. It certainly does not hurt to, if you're on a waiting list, some places there is a waiting list for diagnosis. Start tutoring. It can't hurt, certainly. You don't need a diagnosis to start this dyslexia specific tutoring. And it works even for kids that don't have dyslexia. So I say there's no reason not. So seek diagnosis, start tutoring, try to start just researching it, find out everything you can, start talking to other parents, join these support groups, get information. Those are I think your primary first steps, your most important first steps.
Good ones.
They're great. And this conversation is, I think, just a must listen for any parent out there that's got a struggling learner, whether it be dyslexia or not, right? Go find information, find a support group, find a village of people who have some lived experience. Um, they're going to be there to vet information for you, provide support, whether it's that specific disability or not. I just want to thank you both so much for joining us today. This is KHOI Story City Ames, and you've been listening to I Am Able Iowa. I Am Able Iowa airs the first and last Saturday morning of each month at 9 a.m. on KHOI 89.1 FM. You can also hear us streaming live online at khoifm.org. We invite you to share comments, questions, and program ideas with us at doug@thearcofiowa.org. And if you visit www.thearcofiowa.org, you can find previous episodes and more information about our program. I Am Able Iowa is produced by the Arc of Iowa, which is headquartered in West Des Moines, Iowa, with local chapters here in Ames and across the state of Iowa. Thank you for listening. And until next time, this is Nancy Baker Curtis and JJ Stone saying, You are able, Iowa.